Yes, thanks. No.
Okay, well, so normally we start off with some challenge and prayers.
Please turn to page 7 of the Kurukulla. Start with refuge of bodhicitta, and then go straight through all of the prayers and books. Refuge of bodhicitta on page 7.
Buddha's Dharma and Sangha, until enlightened I seek refuge, through merit from giving and the rest, to aid all may I become Buddha, in the Buddha's Dharma and Sangha, until enlightened I seek refuge, through merit from giving and the rest, to aid all may I become Buddha, in the Buddha's Dharma and Sangha, until enlightened I seek refuge, through merit from giving and the rest, to aid all may I become Buddha. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be parted from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and hatred. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer of the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer of the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer of the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise, then I prostrate. With pure bodies, forms supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. Supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts,
To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha. Homage to the Dharma refuge. Homage to the great Sangha. To all three, ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, and all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, the flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. From Tushita's hundreds of God's protector's heart, to tip of this fresh, pure, white heap, curd-like cloud, Olo Sankrakpa, Dharma's omniscient King, pray come to this place with your disciples, in space ahead, on lion throne, lotus and moon, venerable gurus smile brightly with delight. Pray stay hundreds of eons to spread doctrine as supreme merit, field for my mind of faith. Your wisdom mind sees full range of knowables. Your eloquent speech adorns fortunate ears. Your beauteous body, fame, glory outstanding. Homage to you, worthwhile to think of, hear and see. Pleasant offerings of water, various flowers, fragrant incense, light, perfume, and so on. Oceans of offerings set out and envisioned. Onward up to you, supreme field of merit, non-virtue committed with body, speech, and mind, which I have heaped up since beginningless time, especially what has contradicted three vows. Each I confess from my heart with strong regret. In time of strife you strove to learn and practice. 8 mundane concerns made life essence-full. O protector from depths of our hearts, we rejoice in your powerful great deeds. Venerable gurus from love and wisdom, clouds densely massed in your Dharma Kaya sky, pray loose a rain of vast profound Dharma on fields of disciples just as needed. May whatever virtue that I've here gathered bring benefit to all beings and doctrine, and may it make Venerable Los Andrakpa's essential teachings specially shine forever. Mig made say wei ter chen chen rezig, dream kien pe wan po jam pelyan, du pung malu jom ze sang wedak, gang chen ke pe tsu gien song kappa, lo san rag pe jab la so wadet. O glorious and precious root bestow attainments of body, speech, and mind. O glorious and precious root Guru, pray take seat of lotus at my heart, caring for me with your great kindness. Bestow attainments common and supreme. O glorious and precious root Guru, pray take seat of lotus on my heart, caring for me with your great kindness, until supreme awakening remain steadfast. Homage to the exalted three jewels. Thus have I heard at one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha on Vulture Mountain, together with a great assembly of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of the countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. At that very time, the superior Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, was looking perfectly at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, perfectly looking at the emptiness of inherent existence of the five aggregates also. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said to the superior Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, how should a child of the lineage trained who wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the superior Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, replied to the Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whichever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage in the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly at the emptiness of inherent existence of the five aggregates also. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors in consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are empty without characteristics. That is, they are not produced and do not cease. They have no defilement and no separation from defilement. They have no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. No visible form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no object of touch, no mental phenomenon. There is no I element and so forth up to no mind element, up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no cessation of ignorance and so forth up to no aging and death and no cessation of aging and death. Likewise, there is no suffering, no origin, no cessation, and no path. No exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Because their minds have no obstructions, they have no fear. Passing utterly beyond error, they attain the final state beyond sorrow. All the Buddhas who reside in the three times by relying on the perfection of wisdom become manifest and complete Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the equal to the unequaled mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it is not false, should be known as the truth. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Gata, gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisoha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva, a great being, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and said to the superior Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, well said, O child of the lineage, so it is. The profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced exactly as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra, the superior Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, and the entire assembly as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, Gandharvas, and others, were filled with admiration and highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed One. In the holy supreme abode of the Dakinis, possessed of clairvoyance and miraculous power, unwaveringly caring for practitioners as your children. Homage to the hosts of the three places Dakinis. Akasamaratsa Shadara Samaraya Faith. Akasamaratsa Shadara Samaraya Faith. Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhisoha. Through the power of truth of the exalted three jewels speech, may all on the side of negativity, such as the four Maras, be stopped. May they become non-existent. May they be pacified. All enemies, obstructors, and hindrances, Shanti Kuruye Soha. The 80,000 types of obstructors pacified, freed from adverse harmful conditions. May all be conducive and perfect auspiciousness. Bring happiness and well-being here, right now. Saji Perki Jukshin Meito Praham Ramlingji Nidegyen Padi Sangye Jindu Nigte Oar Gidro Kunandar Jingla Parsho Jetson Lama Dampa Kyenam Kichur Kurukulla Kien Se Trindrigne Jitat Sampe Dojedzima Lahazab Yecherki Charpawabtu So Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Sangye Chodang Soki Chodnam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chunyan Gi Pe Sonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chodang Soki Chodnam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chunyan Gi Pe Sonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chodang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chunyengi Pe Sonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupasho.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. So let's start with a few minutes meditation. So we meditate with our mind, but it starts with good posture. So we usually sit cross-legged on a cushion, or if you're sitting on a chair, our feet should be flat on the floor, or on a cushion if they don't reach. The main thing is to keep your back straight. So while your spine is straight, your neck is just slightly bent forward. Your shoulders are level, one isn't higher than the other, they're parallel with the floor. Your arms are slightly rounded, held out from your body. And your hands rest in your lap, palm upwards, right on top of the left, with the tips of your thumbs touching. And your lips are closed, your lower jaw is relaxed. And the tip of your tongue rests against the front of your hard palate, just behind your top teeth. And your eyes are lightly closed or very slightly open. So, this is a posture that's recommended by centuries of experienced meditators. If we get used to sitting like this, then whenever we do, our mind automatically will get into meditation mode. So then bring your mind sort of inside, away from objects of the 5 physical senses. And then having brought your mind inside, the harder part is to keep it away from the internal distraction, mainly discursive thought. Wanting to think all kinds of things, past, present, future. Thinking me this, me that, I. So try to keep it away from all that. And find your breath. Find your breath as it goes in and out through your nostrils. So we're going to try and focus our mind on our breath at that point where it goes out and comes in through our nostrils. That should be the focus of our concentration. So to help keep our mind on our breath there, we should generate strong determination. Think, now I'm going to focus on my breath for a few minutes without allowing myself to become distracted by anything whatsoever. So having generated that determination, find your breath and try and keep your mind on it. For as long as you can. And if your mind goes off, bring it back. So as soon as you notice your mind has gone off your breath, drop whatever it was that distracted you, come straight back to your breath. So while the main part of our mind, like 95% is focused on the breath, there's like a little corner of the mind watching like a sentry, watching for distractions and then deflecting them before they can distract the main part of your mind, which is meditating on your breath. So that's something we also need to learn how to do. So if we've done this meditation effectively, our mind should be a little bit calmer and clearer than it was. So then take this opportunity to look into your own mind and check your motivation for being here this morning. Just ask yourself, why have I really come to the center today? So if you find that your motivation for being here, the reason you're here, is, like a worldly one, a temporal one with just concern for only this life, we should recognize that the root of that is attachment that seeks only the happiness and comfort of this life, the happiness and comfort of only this life. And that's a negative motivation. That leaves a negative imprint, a negative karma on our consciousness. It plants a negative seed, a seed of suffering. A seed that will ripen into suffering at some point in the future. Suffering that none of us want. So if we find such a motivation, then we have to recognize it for what it is, the cause of suffering, and then replace it with a positive motivation. A motivation that's not concerned with the happiness of this life, motivation that's concerned with the happiness of future lives. So to do that, we can think briefly something like this. Since beginningless time, I've been circling in cyclic existence. My mind is beginningless. And since beginningless time, I've been being born and dying in cyclic existence, one life after another. Mostly in the three lower suffering realms of cyclic existence. But this time, I've been born a human in the upper realms, and I've received not just a human rebirth, but a perfect human rebirth that has all the attributes I need to fully practice Dharma. The path to happiness. So with this perfect human rebirth, I can achieve one of the three levels of happiness. Happiness of future lives within cyclic existence, the happiness of liberation from beginningless cyclic existence, the everlasting happiness and peace of nirvana or liberation, or the ultimate happiness beyond which there is no other, the ultimate happiness of full enlightenment of Buddhahood. It all depends on motivation and the practice that I do based on that motivation. But most important is the motivation. So the happiness of future lives is good, but it doesn't last. So I should aim higher than that. I should aim for the happiness of liberation. But that happiness of liberation isn't the greatest happiness there is. And basically it only takes care of myself and ignores all the countless, infinite other sentient beings who, just like me, don't want suffering and want happiness. So it really fulfills neither my purpose nor theirs. So from the outset I should aim for the highest happiness, that of enlightenment. So that's why I'm here today, that's why I'm here at this center, that's why this center exists, to lead me and all sentient beings to enlightenment. So the path to enlightenment has many steps, and all of which must be traversed to the end, enlightenment. And the path begins at the beginning. With the teaching on the perfect human rebirth. So that's why I'm here this morning, to study the teachings on the perfect human rebirth in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So that's the motivation we should generate for being here today. The determination to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So irrespective of what we thought was our reason for being here, try to make that the reason for being here. And not just for being here, but for doing everything we do in our whole life. So, we call that motivation bodhicitta. the mind of enlightenment. And that mind, that motivation, is the principal cause of enlightenment. And that mind of bodhicitta is based on great compassion. You know, the wish for others to be free from suffering, and seeing their freedom from suffering as more important than our own. Well, I guess we could just sit here for another hour, spacing out. Or maybe I'll have to do what I'm being paid for. Is this too loud? Is that right? Okay. If you can hear me, it's too loud. Yeah. Okay, so actually the real purpose of this morning class is to sell more copies of this book. Just in case you didn't see through the marketing ploy. You mean the whole thing?
Yeah.
Can you read it without buying it? Huh?
I forgot to bring it.
Oh.
No, I have it.
Anyway, it's not the entire contents are not online, but the ebook is $5, so you can get it for half price that way. So I'm trying to decide whether to start talking or start asking questions. Where's Ed? Oh, he's hiding back there.
Here's the first question. Is the book available for sale in the bookstore after class?
Yes.
Thank you. This is a setup.
As I was saying. Oh, you're my stooge.
Pardon me?
Are you my stooge?
Yeah, thank you. I'm proud of it.
Okay, so just to very nutshell this, is that a verb? Right. Just to nutshell Tibetan Buddhism for our new people. So what we call Buddhism is the teachings of the Buddha, who lived in India, 2,600 years ago. I won't go into his story. And about 1,000, actually more than 1,000 years ago, a lot more than 1,000 years ago, Buddhism started to come to Tibet, and it flourished, and then it fizzled out for various reasons, and then this Indian teacher called Atisha came to revive pure Buddhism in Tibet around the 11th century. And he wrote, in order to make it simple for the Tibetan people to understand, because they kind of lost the plot at that point, he wrote this text called A Lamp for the Path of Enlightenment, which took all the Buddha's 40 plus years of teachings and condensed them into a very short text, which laid out these teachings in a path-like structure, which was called in Tibetan the Lam Rim. We call it the stages or steps of the path. So it was like a roadmap to enlightenment, a spiritual roadmap that takes us from where we are now to ultimate perfection of enlightenment. So that was kind of handy thing to have. And to a large extent that became the basis of Tibetan Buddhism. form. In the early days, in I think the 8th century, there was a bit of discussion about, because Buddhism was a little bit late coming to Tibet. It had been in India since the time of the Buddha, and then it went to other countries, east and west and south, like Sri Lanka and so on, Southeast Asia, and then it went north to China, Japan, Korea. I don't know why and Nepal. I don't know why it skipped Tibet exactly until about 650. But the form of Buddhism practiced, like in China, which was called Chan, or we call it Zen, the sort of so-called sudden enlightenment, was different from the Buddhism that was taught in India, which was more like this steps of the path approach. So actually they had this couple of scholars, a Chinese scholar and an Indian scholar, had this big debate in Tibet around 750, and the king of Tibet said that whoever wins the debate, that's the kind of Buddhism that'll be practiced in Tibet. So the Indian guy won, and so that's why Tibetan Buddhism followed this Lam Rim setup, and that was, clearly established a few centuries later when Indian scholar Atisha came to Tibet and wrote this first text. And then subsequently other lamas elaborated on the text, and then the founder of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition that we follow, the Gelug tradition, Lama Tsongkhapa, he wrote the Lam Rim Chenmo, the great Lam Rim, the greatest sort of exposition of Atisha's small text. And then many other lamas in the Gelug school gave commentaries and gave their own teachings on it. And the one that we follow most commonly is called Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, which Geshe Tinley, our resident teacher here, has been teaching, 3 years, something so far. It's a 1,000-page book, and he's going through it very thoroughly. Doing refuge now, or so one of the features of this Lam Rim, or Steps of the Path text, that the great Indian scholar Atisha wrote when he came to Tibet was setting out these three, what's sometimes called the three scopes, or three levels of motivation that I actually mentioned before. Lama Zopa Rinpoche calls it the sort of levels of capability, what a practitioner is able to do in terms of that person's innate spiritual abilities. So once a person understands that this isn't the only life, that there are future lives, and that what happens to us in future lives can be determined to a large extent by what we do in this life. Of course it's influenced. We have beginningless previous lives, so of course they play a major part in what we're able to do in this life, and to a large extent what we can do in future lives. But because of the proximity of this life to our next life, we can influence it very greatly by what we do in this life, and that's why we need to understand this evolution of the mind and the opportunities we have to create our future, not just in the next life, but forever in this life. So if we don't understand that there are future lives, then everything we do will be focused on this life. And everything we do is pretty much determined by the sort of innate aspiration we have to avoid suffering and problems and to find happiness, to be happy. And the mistake that most people make is to think that happiness comes from outside. You know, it depends on external factors. So that's why we've developed such a materialistic society. And that's why the world is in the incredible mess that it's in, because people think happiness comes from outside, from external factors. And people completely ignore their internal world, don't even know there is an internal world, or how to understand it, or how to work with it, how to develop it. Anyway, so if we can see that just focusing on this life is a terrible waste of time and in fact the cause of suffering, if we can see that and understand that we should be focused at lives beyond this one, some of us can't think beyond future lives in cyclic existence, in this world in which we've been living since beginningless time, the world of life, death and rebirth. So I mean, we know Buddhism is about, really what it's about is about the mind. It's not about Buddha or God or some superior being. It's about the mind, and it's about our own mind. And when it comes to mind, there are basically two kinds of mind. There's enlightened mind, the mind of the Buddha, and there's sentient beings' mind. So and the difference between an enlightened mind and an unenlightened mind or a sentient being's mind is ignorance. The Buddha's mind, enlightened mind, is completely free from ignorance, and a sentient being's mind has a level of ignorance. Subtle, gross, whatever it is, but there's some ignorance there. So a being that's not enlightened is a sentient being, and that sentient being has a certain amount of ignorance in his or her mind. So among sentient beings, there are two kinds of sentient beings. There are those who are free from cyclic existence, who have attained liberation from the beginningless, wheel of suffering, and there are sentient beings who are in cyclic existence, like us. Excuse me if I'm selling anybody short. But if you're out of samsara, then you're really wasting your time here. So cyclic existence, or samsara, the wheel of life, the Buddha taught, is divided into 6 realms. The 3 lower realms where the suffering is intense, and 3 upper realms where the suffering is less intense. But they're all pervaded by suffering, because they're all pervaded by ignorance, the gross ignorance. So again, when it comes to ignorance, there are 2 levels of ignorance. There's ignorance of the ultimate nature, and there's ignorance of karma, or cause and effect. So karma, cause and effect, it explains that some actions, and we're mainly talking about the mind, some actions lead to suffering and some actions lead to happiness. So the whole thing is to understand what sort of actions lead to suffering and avoid them, and what sort of actions lead to happiness and to cultivate them. So avoiding negative actions, the ones that they're called negative because they lead to a result that we don't want, suffering. Avoiding negative actions and practicing or cultivating positive ones, positive, because they lead to what we do want, happiness. That's called practicing Dharma. Dharma is what we call the teachings of the Buddha. And what the Buddha taught was how to avoid suffering and how to attain happiness, based on his own experience. He discovered, how the mind works in this way. How the principal cause of suffering is from the mind, and how the principal cause, the main cause of happiness, is from the mind. So if we understand karma, if we understand cause and effect, we can begin to lead ourselves out of suffering towards greater and greater levels of happiness. And the first levels of happiness that we lead ourselves to are within cyclic existence. So cyclic existence is, often likened to a prison. We're trapped within this realm of suffering. And within it there are greater sufferings and there are lesser sufferings, but they're all sufferings. Like prisons, like the lower realms are like the supermax, and the upper realms are sort of like the, where the white collar criminals go, But they're still all prisons. So you don't want to be in prison. You don't even want to be in the white collar prison, I don't know if do they have golf courses?
Some of them do.
You're kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
Actually, it may not be too bad then.
Everybody's wondering why you're asking me.
Okay, we'll move away from that right there. He hasn't been in one. Not yet. So, anyway, so, I guess, compared to being on death row or something, and being in one of these prisons with a golf course, you want to be in the one with the golf course. But, so, it's all relative. So, what we're experiencing now, being human, is, infinitely, is one of the three upper realms. So the three lower realms are the hell realm, with the realm of greater suffering, and the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. So, we don't have a mind that has a capacity to see the hungry ghost realm or the hell realm. But we can certainly see the animal realm. And we can just see what incredible suffering it is to be an animal, And again, when we think about animals, we shouldn't look at what happens to their bodies, the sort of suffering, the physical suffering. We should try to understand what it's like to have the mind of an animal. Lama Zopa Rinpoche has said that if we could understand or experience for just 15, 30 seconds the mind of an animal, it would be such a shock that we would never sleep again. We would just spend all our time practicing Dharma to make sure that we never got reborn as an animal again. Because we've, in beginningless lives, we've been an animal. We've been an animal countless times, just, we've forgotten. So that's much less suffering than the hungry ghost realm, and that's much less suffering than the hell realm. So, we certainly don't want to be reborn in the hell realms. So if we understand the incredible suffering of the three lower realms, then our first level of motivation is to practice Dharma, to make sure we're not born in the three lower realms. And that's the mind of the being of the least capable. Lama Zopa calls it the lower capable being, which is really, to me, not very good English, but the lower capable being. But that's what he calls it. So the being of the least level of capability. So there's some capability, the capability to practice so that we don't get born in the lower realms. But it's limited, because it's still in prison. So the next so that's one level of happiness. The next level of happiness is freedom from cyclic existence. So we call that liberation or nirvana. So that comes through realizing, through getting rid of the ignorance that doesn't understand the ultimate nature. So we call it realizing emptiness, or the nature of reality. So that's sort of the motivation or the path, the result of the being of the intermediate level of capability, or the middle capable being, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche calls it. So, and in, what other translators call it, it's called the lower scope and the middle scope. And then we come to the great scope, or the path of the being of the great capable being, or the practitioner with the greatest level of capability, to understand that the only worthwhile goal to really aim for is that of the ultimate goal of enlightenment. So that's the motivation that Tibetan Buddhism adopted. And again, when we can divide the teachings of the Buddha into two vehicles, or two yanas, the Hinayana, the lesser vehicle, or the Mahayana, the great vehicle. So the goal of the lesser vehicle is individual liberation, freedom of the individual, oneself, from the beginningless suffering of cyclic existence. So, and to achieve that is like an incredible achievement. It's, we go beyond karma, we go beyond ignorance of the ultimate nature of the mind. But from the Mahayana point of view, it's kind of relatively selfish, concerned for your own happiness, and you're not really doing much, except in a very passive way, about others' suffering. Lama Yeshe, one of my, the founder, Lama Yeshe, from on your left there, and then it's Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So they're our teachers. They were they're the reason that this centre exists, and they started teaching Westerners back in Nepal at Kopan Monastery in the very early 70s, and so gradually this international Buddhist organisation, of which this centre is part, developed. So I'm very happy to welcome my old friend Ronaldo here from Brazil, or Houston, Texas. So we last saw each other at Kopan in Nepal in 1976. So he knows what I'm talking about. So Lama Yeshe used to say that those practitioners who aim for individual liberation or nirvana, freedom, just for their own happiness, it requires incredible effort. You have to completely renounce cyclic existence. So renunciation means, we all have a certain degree of renunciation in that none of us wants to experience what we identify as suffering. So what we identify as suffering, hunger, thirst, pain, illness, not having material things, losing stuff that we have, meeting undesirable circumstances, and these obvious levels of suffering that even animals pretty much recognize as suffering. That's only the beginning of suffering. But in terms of sort of innate renunciation, at least we have that level of renunciation. We renounce what we identify as suffering. What we need to do is extend our understanding of suffering to recognize suffering masquerading as happiness, because the temporary happiness that we seek, the antidote to those gross sufferings, that's not real happiness. It's just, like I said, suffering in disguise, or fake happiness. It's not real happiness because it doesn't last. And in seeking it, in working for it, we actually create, because of attachment to it, we create negative karma, the cause of future suffering. And then beyond that, so seeing temporary happiness and suffering, renouncing that, setting our sights on a higher form of happiness than just that, temporary happiness. And then also recognizing that we're susceptible to the gross suffering or the changeable suffering of temporary happiness, because we're controlled by delusion and karma. We because our minds contain ignorance of ultimate nature and ignorance of karma, we're susceptible to suffering. So we also have to renounce this very fundamental cause of suffering, ignorance. So renunciation is a very expansive and sort of intelligent mind. So with strong renunciation, determination to escape from all levels of suffering, we learn to meditate and to develop single-pointed concentration. So what we tried to do before at the beginning with this breathing meditation, that's like, that's sort of the beginnings of developing single-pointed concentration. So I think just from our experience of just trying to sit still and keep our mind on our breath for a few seconds or a minute, I mean, generally that's not easy, is it? Our mind doesn't want to stay there. It wants to go here, it wants to go there, it wants to think all kinds of things. So that concentration meditation, or trying to develop single-pointedness, or fixed meditation, or placement meditation, it's called many things, placement meditation. Placement is quite good. Really, it should be called replacement, because we place our mind, it goes away, we replace it on the object, and we have to keep doing it. And if we do, gradually the period of time in which we can keep our mind focused on our breath or some other object will increase. But again, that brings us back to what are the factors that make it easier to develop concentration, and then that again brings us back to the foundation of all Buddhist practice, which is pure moral conduct, or avoiding creating negative karma. So that's the foundation, the practice of pure conduct. Then on that, and that's part of renunciation. So on the basis of renunciation, then if we focus on developing single-pointed concentration, we can do that. And then that concentration that we develop then becomes like an instrument with which we start to try to understand and realize the ultimate nature or emptiness, or you go beyond this concept of the self-existent I, or sometimes we call it ego. So anyway, these are very powerful, focused, concentrated minds. The renunciation, single point of concentration, and then the realization of emptiness. Or so if our motivation is to attain liberation from psychic existence for ourselves, and we do intense practices and we get that result, it's like this incredible sort of blissful relief. And because of the power of renunciation and the power of the concentration, the person who attains liberation or becomes what's called an arhat in Sanskrit. That being will remain in that state of blissful concentration for eons, for a vast period of time. But eventually, that concentration will begin to wane. So, and this is what I was going to say, Lama Yeshe will say, then the Buddhas will kind of, knock on that person's door of concentration and say, okay, now you've been absorbed in bliss for so many eons, but this is not the end of the road, even though you might have thought it was. But, there are other sentient beings suffering and you haven't accomplished your own purpose. There's still a long way to go. So then that person has to start to develop bodhicitta, start to develop compassion for the beings left behind, and start to follow the Mahayana path. And then strive for enlightenment. So you know the analogy of the two streams joining one, right? So it's like that you can imagine a wide river that's formed by two fairly wide tributaries, like a Y. So you're on this side and you want to get to the other side. So you can get to the other side by going over the first branch and then the second branch, or you can take the wider, harder voyage across after they've joined. So that's like the Mahayana path. That's where you set your sights on enlightenment from the beginning, and you cross the river where it's wider. So the other way, the Hinayana or the lesser vehicle path, is you cross one branch, then you stay absorbed in the bliss of nirvana for a while, then the Buddhas wake you up, and then you have to cross the other one. So that takes a lot longer. So from the Mahayana point of view, that's not desirable because it takes you a lot longer to get to the state where you can benefit other human beings. So the bottom line of Mahayana Buddhism, of Tibetan Buddhism, of the Lam Rim, the bottom line is to get to enlightenment as quickly as possible, not for your own purpose, but so that you can be able to benefit others as quickly as possible in the greatest possible way. So, to be able to do that, all that, to be able to understand, to study and practice the path to enlightenment isn't easy. And very few people can do it. For various reasons. So that's what this teaching's about. Perfect human rebirth. The perfect human rebirth is a human rebirth where everything has come together that make it that our life is totally conducive to understanding and practicing the path to enlightenment. And to be in that situation is incredibly rare and incredibly precious. And that's really what we have in our hand now. But, the problem is that we don't recognize what our life is and the potential that we have. So that's why this teaching is given as extensively as it is. So when you look at the extensive commentaries on Atisha's text on the A Lamp for the Path, which it was called, like with Lama Tsongkhapa's Great Lam Rim or Pabongka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand that Geshe-la's teaching here on Sunday mornings normally. The commentary is divided into 4 sections. So it talks about the qualities of Atisha, how he was qualified to write this text, and it talks about the benefits of this kind of presentation of the Buddha's teachings, the steps of the path, And then the 3rd section is how to study and how to teach the Lam Rim, the stages of the path. And then the 4th, the main one, is how we should practice this teaching. So that's really divided into 2. So actually the very first section is called Developing Devotion to the Spiritual Teacher, and that's called the root of the path. So like the root of the tree or root of a plant is the most important part in a way. If the root is unhealthy, the plant will be unhealthy. If the root is healthy, then the plant has a fighting chance. So that's what really, if we're serious in trying to follow this path, if we're serious in trying to reach enlightenment, we can't do it without a teacher. So the most important quest in life really is to find a qualified teacher of the path to enlightenment. And these days, it's a lot easier to do than it was in my day, if you can imagine that far back. We had to go to India or Nepal to find teachers. Of course, most of us weren't there looking for a teacher. Most of us were looking, trying to find the best hash. But somehow it was kind of a bait and switch, We went there looking for happiness and we found happiness. Anyway, it's another story. But, now there are centres like this. Back in the 70s, there weren't centres like this in the West. A couple maybe, And there are many qualified teachers in the West now. Still, I'd recommend going to the East. and spending a few years in India and Nepal, studying and doing retreats, and because it's a completely different experience. However, if we can't do that, then we definitely can find a qualified teacher in the West. So that's important. And then having found the teacher, then we need to establish a healthy relationship and then follow that teacher's advice. But, the caveat is always, you've got to make sure, there are a lot of false teachers around, a lot of pretend teachers. So you have to be careful. In choosing spiritual teacher, as it says, you don't want to be like a dog with a piece of meat, You throw a piece of meat to a dog will eat it without checking if it's poisoned or not, So we have to be a little more careful than that. And, the teachings explain in a lot of detail what makes a qualified teacher and what makes an unqualified teacher. So there's actually this book is the third in the series. So the first book is called the first in the series is called The Heart of the Path, which is a big book by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and that explains all about, the spiritual teacher. So, the benefits of following spiritual teacher, the shortcomings of not following the spiritual teacher, and how to identify a spiritual teacher, and all the, how we should practice. So that's an extremely important book to read and understand. Then the second book in the series, the one before this, is actually called How to Practice Dharma. So that's kind of what I was talking about before, about how to recognize the line between Dharma actions and non-Dharma actions, between actions that lead to suffering and actions that lead to happiness. So that's like an extremely important distinction to understand and to be able to make. And then, having been able to make that distinction, then to realize the importance of seizing the opportunity that we have at the moment, to recognize what the perfect human rebirth is. And, so this teaching is divided into three sections. There's recognizing the perfect human rebirth. So that has what are called, 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses. So the 8 freedoms are freedom from being in certain conditions that make it impossible or extremely difficult, if not impossible, to practice Dharma. And then the 10 richnesses, there's a little overlap of so the freedom, we're free from these bad conditions, and the richnesses, we have these incredible opportunities. So 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses. So to think deeply about them, and so that we can recognize who we are, so we can understand what our life is and how we got here and why we're here. Because this didn't come about by accident. We're here because in our previous lives, worked extremely hard to get us to this point. This is what we wanted. But now we're here, we kind of sort of take it for granted, like, thanks Mum, thanks Dad, It's not like that, our parents played a small part in creating our body, but we played a major part in creating our mind. So 3 things came together when we were conceived. There was a sperm and an egg, and that came about by accident or intention, who knows. And but the most important thing is our consciousness joined the products of conception. So our consciousness came from our previous life. So our previous lives worked very hard. They practiced Dharma. Because if they hadn't, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be born human, and we certainly wouldn't be in a Dharma center like this. So, the first thing in this teaching on the perfect human rebirth is to recognize the 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses, and to appreciate each and every one, of those 18 attributes. So we need to study and meditate on that until we really have the feel, when we think, I've received this perfect human rebirth, we have this incredible feeling of happiness. It's like, they say, it's like, a beggar. You see these pictures online here and there about these people who have to live in garbage dumps. Mainly in the third world, I guess, But that's how they live. They live in garbage dumps, going through other people's garbage, trying to find something that they can sell, maybe to get the next meal, like that. So if you imagine, like, a beggar finds in the garbage, like a diamond, could really set that person up for the rest of their life, to recognize a diamond as a diamond and what it can do. That sort of, when I picture that, I imagine the person will be hiding it from everybody else because some of the bigger kids are going to take it away or something, But anyway, leaving reality aside for a moment. But just the elation of finding something precious in the garbage is kind of like the feeling we should have when we finally recognize, what our life is and how incredibly precious and this perfect human rebirth is. So then the next one is, we have to understand how it's useful, how it's meaningful that we have this precious life. So generally that teaching is divided into 3 parts. So this life that we have is useful in a temporary sense, that we can, as I said before, we can use this life to create to get better future lives. We can, by understanding how karma works, we can do things in this life that will make us, wealthy in future lives, that will make us powerful in future lives, that will make us, beautiful in future lives. All these things that we see others have, or that we may have ourselves, like beauty, like in my case, wealth, maybe in other people's cases. Anyway, we look around the world, we see all kinds of lives, where people are rich and famous and beautiful and this and that, These are all results of a cause. Now, whether they created that cause intentionally or inadvertently, hard to say. But these are results of causes. If we can understand that the cause of wealth is generosity, or the cause of beauty is patience and not getting angry, and in generally that all these good results, conventionally good results, are the result of positive actions of kindness and compassion and generosity and patience and things like that. Then we can understand that if we want to enjoy future lives like that, we can create the cause. So this is this is a minor benefit, but it's a benefit. It's one way in which this life is useful. If you're famous, if you're rich, if you're good looking, if people are attracted to you, if you have powerful speech that other people listen to and take notice of, you can do an incredible amount of good. So, again, the intention for having these attributes is important. I mean, you can use them to benefit others, or you can use them to benefit yourself, and that way you just burn it all up and at the end nothing's left. Or if you use it to benefit others, there can be huge results from that. So these aren't necessarily vain goals, to be beautiful, to be powerful, to be rich. Because generally those people who have those attributes are the ones who can influence others. So they can influence others in a good way or a bad way. So one benefit of the Perfect Human Rebirth is that we can understand the mind, we understand how karma works, and we can create the cause for these worldly attributes that help, more easily allow us to help others. So it can be useful in a temporary way, but more importantly, this Perfect Human Rebirth can be used to attain ultimate goals. So there are two ultimate goals. There's the relatively ultimate goal of liberation from cyclic existence, and then there's the ultimate goal of enlightenment. So that's the real, benefit of this life, is that we can understand and practice the three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, what I said before, the ultimate compassion, the cause of enlightenment, and and we can develop the right view of emptiness, understand reality. So these are the three principal: renunciation, bodhicitta, right view. These are the paths that we need to practice to become enlightened, and that's what we can do with this life. And you look around, almost nobody else knows about it, let alone can do it. I mean, there's 6-7 billion people in the world. How many people understand why they're human and what the potential they could have? And then this Perfect Human Rebirth is useful in a third way, in that we can use every moment, waking or sleeping, every moment, 24 hours a day, can be used to generate bodhicitta. Every moment, we can transform every moment of our life into the cause of enlightenment. By understanding, what bodhicitta is and how to generate it and how to transform worldly actions into Dharma actions with our mind. It's kind of like the ultimate alchemy, to transform worldly actions into not just Dharma actions but into bodhicitta. So there's another book by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, that one's free, out there, called Bodhisattva Attitude, that talks a lot about how to do this, how to make our Perfect Human Rebirth useful in this third way, by transforming our life, every moment of our life, into bodhicitta. Whatever we do, whether eating, sleeping, going to the bathroom, working, talking, whatever action, worldly action we do. We have to do worldly actions. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to work, we have to do all these things, But they can be done with a ordinary, worldly sort of motivation, or they can be transformed into path to enlightenment. So if you look at that book, Bodhisattva Attitude, that explains in great detail how to think with every action: opening a door, closing a door, putting on your clothes, taking off your clothes, having a shower, going, like I said, going to the bathroom. I mean, everything. There's a way to think, to make it things that we have to do beneficial for others and the cause of enlightenment. So we need to study and meditate on those three ways of how the perfect human rebirth is useful, highly meaningful. Until we have the realization of that. And the realization is that if we think that we've wasted like a minute or even a second, if you think, I just wasted a second, we have this incredible feeling of loss, like we just threw a bag of gold into a river and it's kind of gone forever, So, these worldly examples, finding a jewel in the garbage, dropping a bag, there's the examples from the teachings, they kind of don't really, they're just to give us a vague idea of how we're supposed to feel. But if we just think that a minute went by where we didn't practice Dharma and we have this feeling of incredible loss, then we're close to having had that have the realization of that meditation. So I think we know, realization is beyond an intellectual understanding. It's a real part of our being. When understanding becomes a part of our being, intellectual understanding becomes wisdom. And a sort of irrevocable part of our mind, then we're ready to move on to the next meditation. And that's how the stages of the path works. Of course, we study the whole thing to get an idea of its scope and to get an intellectual understanding of, these three aspects, of these three levels of the path. Lower capable, middle capable, great capable, and so on. But then once we have a clear intellectual understanding of what it is and how it works, like the overall, like if you're going on a long trip, you look at the map and you see the whole where you have to go, Then you actually set out, and you have to start the car and you go the first mile and the second mile, and you have all these destinations through which you have to pass to get to the ultimate goal. So once we have an understanding of the thing, then we have to sort of go back, we have to cultivate this guru-disciple relationship, and then we have to understand and meditate on the perfect human rebirth. To get realizations. So then when we have a realization of the perfect human rebirth, then we move on to the next one. So the rest of the path that follows is, once we've realized the perfect human rebirth, then how do we extract its essence? How do we make it meaningful? So then the rest of the path comes in. The next teaching is teaching on impermanence and death. Anyway, I haven't finished this. So the first section of the teaching and meditation on perfect human rebirth is, what it is. The next one is how to make it meaningful. And the third one is so these things answer questions. The first one answers, what am I? You've got what's going on with this human life? It's a perfect human rebirth. That's what you are. That's what you have. So okay, cool. So what? So what is that you can make it useful in these different ways. Again, there's okay. So what? So look, there's a room full of them. Can't be that hard. I mean, look at these other idiots who've got it, you know? It's not true. So the third section is it easy to get again, you know? Okay, so this is okay, you know. Next life I'll have it again, you know, maybe, you know. It can't be that hard. It is hard. So the third section is, it explains, you know, what are the causes of perfect human rebirth. It's a result of a cause. And each of these 18 attributes is the result of its own cause. So we have to create the cause of each of these 18 things. In general, the cause of being born in the upper realms is practicing what I mentioned before, morality. You know, not creating negative karma, because negative karma is the cause of being born in the lower realms, in the hell realms, the hungry ghost realms, animal realms. The result of morality or good karma is being born in the upper realms. But if you're born in the upper realms, in very deprived or poor or, you know, circumstances, in poverty, in a bad place, then it doesn't help much. We see a lot of people in those sort of situations. And there's not much they can do. They can't really practice Dharma, you know, even if they wanted to. So also the practice of generosity is important to make sure that you have a life with a certain level of means. But then to get a perfect human rebirth, we have to practice more than that. We have to practice what we call the 6 perfections, the 6 bodhisattva perfections. So it's not only charity and morality, but patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. So we have to practice, you know, this sort of engage in this wider set of practices, and also we have to make very pure prayers to be born, to receive another perfect human rebirth. If we make pure prayers to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, with as much compassion for others as we can muster, and with as few thoughts of our own benefit as we can, then that perfect human rebirth will come sort of by the way. If we make pure prayers for enlightenment. So we have to practice charity, morality, other perfections, we have to make pure prayers. So those in general, these are the causes that bring about perfect human rebirth. So you know, even if we have it now, we can look and see how much of our life we spend practicing these things to know if we're going to get another one or not. So the perfect human rebirth is extremely rare because it's a result of a cause, and the cause is extremely difficult to create. And then the Buddha gave some different analogies to illustrate how difficult it is. So, you know, the usual one is the blind turtle. You know, so we have to so this is kind of a visual thing, you know, visualize this vast ocean, like almost encompassing the entire universe. And on the surface of this vast ocean, there's a small golden ring floating, and it keeps, it's, you know, it's never still. It's always here. It's there. It's everywhere. You know. Then in the depths of the ocean, there's a blind turtle swimming about, and once every 100 years, the blind turtle comes to the surface. You know, sticks its head up, blind, can't see anything anyway, and goes back down again. So the chances of that little turtle coming up once every 100 years and sticking its head through the golden ring, you've got to stay pretty remote. Pretty remote. So the chances of perfect human rebirth are greater than that. So what we have now is, you know, beyond the chances of a turtle sticking its head through the golden ring. So, you know, the symbology, you know, the vast ocean is cyclic existence, and the turtle being down there, except for once every 100 years, is like the turtle being blind means the sentient beings are ignorant, blinded by ignorance. So swimming around being in the lower realms. And then coming to the surface once is just reaching the upper realms. So getting close to the ring might be being born human, but not meeting the Dharma. Even though the Dharma exists, but not meeting the Dharma. So sticking its head through the golden ring is like, that's, you've won the lottery. That's us. We're the blind turtles with our heads through the ring at the moment. But then it goes down again. So then there are other things, like if you throw a handful of dry rice against glass, the chances of rice sticking to that glass are greater than receiving perfect human rebirth. Anyway, there's different kind of analogies like that to think about. So it's not easy. And it's not easy because the courses are very difficult to create.
What's the dirt under the
Then if you, the dirt under the fingernails, she's asking. It's harder for me than for you because you've got longer fingernails. But if you think of all the dirt that constitutes the Earth, the planet Earth, and if you scrape your finger in the dirt and you get a little bit of dirt under your nail, well, the dirt under your fingernail represents the number of perfect human rebirths there are compared to the amount of dirt in the Earth. There's so few. So the dirt on the particles of dirt in the Earth represent other sentient beings. The dirt under your fingernail represents number of perfect human rebirths. So
to be clear, a perfect human rebirth is when you're born human and meet the Dharma.
there are 8 freedoms and there are 10 richnesses. So I didn't really go through them in detail because we don't have that much time. But the perfect human rebirth is freedom from birth in the hells, freedom from birth as a hungry ghost, freedom from birth as an animal, freedom from birth as a long life God, freedom from birth at a time when the Buddha hasn't come to earth and given the Dharma teachings, freedom from being in a place where there are no Dharma teachings, freedom from having physical, mental issues or physical issues that prevent you from hearing or studying the Dharma, and freedom from having fixed wrong views that, being born in society, for example, wouldn't allow you to study or practice Dharma, or being in a family that wouldn't allow that sort of thing, or having just strong beliefs. It's absolute nonsense that there are past and future lives. There's no such thing as karma, having fixed wrong views, unshakable. So those are 8 unfree states. If you have any of those 8, if you're born in any of those 8 situations, then you don't have the opportunity to practice Dharma. So the 10 richnesses are, like being born human, being born in the centre of a religious country, having perfect organs, not having committed 5 extreme negative actions, which make it very karmically difficult to practice, having faith in the 3 baskets of teachings, being born when the Buddha's taught, being born where the teaching's still alive, where there are still living teachings, where there are other practitioners, and having help and getting support from family and friends to practice, and getting teachings from a compassionate teacher. So those are sort of roughly the 18 attributes. So you need to have them all to have a perfect human rebirth. If you're missing 1 or 2 of the attributes, for example, it doesn't mean you can't practice. It means you just can't practice as well as you could have otherwise, And also, but if you identify what you're missing, then you can create the cause of that to make sure next time you got the full hand, you know. Anyway, that's it. So, so anyway, time's up. So if you have any questions, too bad. Okay. So I'll turn it over to the Master of Ceremonies here. You just do a quick dedication. Yeah. So we just do some dedication prayers to... So the thing about the perfect action is, perfect action has perfect motivation, and the action should be done properly, and then it should have proper conclusion, which is a proper dedication at the end. So now just to seal this action, we'll do the dedication.
39, a quick Thanksgiving bundle offering. Page 39. Saji perki jukshing me tok tram ri rabling ji ni de gien pa di sang ye jing du mig te ulwaki grokun nam dak jing la chur par shuk je tsun la me kutse rab ten ching nam katrin le chok chur ge pa dang lo sang ten pe dra sa sung gi dro we mun sel tak tu neg yu chi idam guru Ratnamandalakam Niryatayami. Page 57, the prayer of dedication. 57. 57. Through this virtue may I swiftly, having gained Guru Buddha state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious supreme Bodhi mind, may it where unborn arise, and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. On page 75, the Mitsema. 75. Mikmate say waiter chen chen rezi dream ken be wang por jam tel yang gang chen ke pe tsu yen song ka pa lo sang rak pe jab la so wa de. Thank you, Nick.
Hi everyone. First of all, thanks very much, Nick, for coming to teach here. It was wonderful. I'll do a little plug for Nick as well. He's got a retreat up at Milarepa Center starting July 6th. It is called Copan, Vermont. July 16th? 16th. It might have sounds like 6th, so no, there's no rush. Then we have on the 6th, which is next Sunday, even though it's 4th of July weekend, we will have teaching, and we will also afterwards, it's His Holiness the Dalai Lama's birthday, so there'll be a reading from the Bodhisattva Way of Life, and Geshe-la will point out which chapters we should be reading. There's also Naman Ketchok coming July 11th and 12th. He's a concert on the 11th, and then on the 12th he has a teaching. Also we have a family day on the 12th where folks can, children come over, families hang out with Geshe-la in the backyard. If you wanted to contact Jazz, she in the newsletter you see, you can contact her for more details. Then the last one, two things. Donations you can drop in the wooden box on the way out. We don't charge for our teachings, but the house has a lot of things and just everything to keep going. Specifically, also we are looking for sponsorship of 2 of the 3 screen doors. So that'll also be in the newsletter. It's just, this is something specific that we need. And we also have the Amazon wish list in which you can go pick and choose some of the other things. All of that's in the newsletter. If you don't get the newsletter, just put your email address on the piece of paper outside. There's like a sign-up board, and I'll get you on the list. Thanks, everyone.